Hello and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman and I'm one of your hosts. Every week we bring you guests, makers from all over the world of all kind who identify as female, non-binary, or transgender. Today's guest is Lee. Lee is queer, non-binary woodworker and digital promoter from the UK. Lee has been on a journey with their woodworking for many years now. They started with a workshop being able to make larger things, and then when they lost their workshop, someone suggested carving since not much space is needed for that. Now Lee is a master carver of especially small things with inlays, and you can see their creations all across social media under the Rainbow Carver. During the pandemic, Lee started another journey, this one around their gender identity. Lee has always been open on social media about not only their gender journey, but also topics such as mental health, and is seen as a cornerstone of the online making community. And it was definitely my pleasure to get to chat with Lee, especially since I've been after them for a while now to get them on as a guest. So I know we talk about a lot of things in this episode, more than just woodworking and wood carving. It's a good one though. Before hopping into our conversation together, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon, and especially our two podcast sponsors, Matthew from Artigiano Serio and Bonnie from Toolmom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com. So thank you to both of them for being sponsors of the podcast. And thank you also to Candace, CJ Woodcrane, Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin Lefty's Woodshop, Christy Twisted Twine, Jeremy Spees, Sammy Go Sammy Lee, Rachel Moody Makes, Laura Oakley Soap Company, Brandy Studio Obey, Ellen Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued and ongoing support. And if you're enjoying the podcast and would like to find out about the ways that you can support us, please stick around to the end of the episode and I will let you know all the ways you can do that. All right, let's head into the conversation with Lee of the Rainbow Carver. Well, Lee, you certainly know that I always like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lee. I'm non-binary. I'm English, if you can't tell. I am a woodworker and a digital promoter. So I'm struggling with the title of that second job, whether it's a digital coach or a promoter, because I have a very, very specific job that I trained to do 3 years ago in tech. So I help people with their social media. I think it's probably the easiest way to do it, to say it. And what else? I'm 40-something. You have to know me better to know how old now. I'm 45. I'm not ashamed of that anymore. It's funny, isn't it? You get to a certain age, you're like, yeah, I'm 45. I survived this long.
Right. Exactly.
What else is there? I don't know what else to say. I have a beautiful partner, Joe, who's American, which is why I'm in California right now. No children, no pets. This cat's driving me nuts, by the way. So if I have to jump up and squirt her with the water gun at some point, do excuse me. It's not animal torture. She's an asshole.
You mentioned you were non-binary, but I do want to make sure I ask, what are your pronouns?
They, them. Okay. Although I'm not very strict on pronouns in the sense of saying I tend to only correct people who know better, should know better. Mm-hmm. So like if someone's just met me and they make the mistake, I've got a thick skin when it comes to that, because it's not important to me if strangers, that as long as strangers use my correct name, it's not important to me if they use the wrong pronouns. Especially in America, have to grow a thick skin with sir and ma'am kind of stuff and just be like, I would prefer that you called me ma'am over sir, actually, because I am definitely not sir. Thank you very much. So, Ian, unfortunately, in your culture in America, it's very, very prevalent and you can't get away from it. So I'd rather than fight every single day of my life, I'd rather just, correct the people who should know better.
Yeah. I definitely I mean, my pronouns are she and her, though I think as I'm getting older, I've started to like reflect a little bit more on that. But still like, I,
It's a spectrum. I mean, that's the problem
yeah,
with
yeah,
with she, her, and he, him, is that it's so binary.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
it's just it's so unfortunate that the only middle ground is they, them, and non something. Like I hate
right.
being called non-binary. You know, I have a, as you know, I have a an open journal that I use on Instagram
Mm-hmm,
to kind of track my own progress through this journey of gender,
mm-hmm,
and I call it what do I call it? Binary adjacent. I'm binary adjacent. You know, I'm living outside the binary. There are other ways of saying it, but you know, it's just, it seems to me that especially people who have always identified as whatever they were given when they were born, certainly in their 30s and 40s, are now starting to say, well, you know what? It isn't black and white, is it? There's a huge grey
yeah,
area of spectrum in between that we aren't even acknowledging. La 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 la, doesn't exist.
right,
What? And that's the uncomfortableness a lot of people feel, is
right,
actually because they're pushed way too far. Men feel this too. I've spoken to men who are like, I get bullied if I even talk about having a kind of feminine side, even though it's
mm-hmm,
not as clear a cut as masculine and feminine energy. But
right,
that we haven't given men the language to say these things either.
correct. I mean, I know that's something that like my wife and I are like really focused on with our kiddos
Mm.
is having kind of an open dialogue, and trying to counter the culture that is seen on especially like children's programming.
Oh, it's
And
awful. Disney's got a
yes,
lot to answer for,
they
really.
do. um and so it's a constant, like, okay, they're, you know I noticed it in younger ages, like between 4 and 6, and my youngest is 6 now. Um, and she still struggles with like, oh, but that person's a boy and they're liking pink, and we're just finally getting like through to her of colors have no gender, like
It's weird
toys
because we
have no
train
gender,
them,
right?
literally train them from birth, you know, all these gender
Yep,
reveal parties, you know, pink for a girl, blue for a
yep,
boy,
yep.
and all that. Which, thank you, Victorians, it was the other way round.
Exactly.
We had the cool blue color.
I know.
What the hell? So yeah, but I think it's normal for children of that age. I've got 9 children in my life that I count as my children, because if I've changed their nappies, picked them up from school, or had to have dinner with them several times a night and do homework that I don't understand, then I'm a
Right,
parent.
right.
So I call them my kids. So like I can give them back, fair enough. But
Yeah,
they all seem to go through this thing of understanding where they are in the family too. So they do
yeah,
this thing about gender, but then they also do. So my mummy is your sister, but you haven't got the same mummy.
right.
That's right. So my mummy, my grandma, so they do all this thing,
Yeah,
don't they? And then they keep coming back to you to go, is that right?
yeah.
That this and this and this and this. Oh, I got it right. And it's like, yeah, and this is where you are. And then years ago we had this person and this person.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna kill this cat. I swear she keeps surprise attacking my ankles. It's not cute, it's not funny, and I'm gonna throw her out the window in a minute. But yeah, so and I think that the gender part's part of that, because
Yeah.
one of the things I understood in my family is that I'm the only queer, remotely queer, not even remotely queer as anybody else. My family are so white bread boring that
Mhm.
there isn't a single person of color. There isn't a single person of any other sexuality other than heterosexual.
Mhm.
And there's nobody of any genders other than male and female. It's the worst family I could have been born into. Like, for understanding, because there
Right.
was
Yeah.
nothing given to me at all. Because
Yeah.
remember, I'm Gen X, so it was, here's a key at 10 years old, get on with it.
Right.
You know, so like but what I found with this generation that we've raised since, so the oldest one is now 24, just turned
Mhm.
24 this month, and the youngest is 3. So we've got a full spectrum of basically an entire lifetime of a human. But
Yeah.
basically with 24 you're a human with a lifetime behind you, really,
Mhm.
in real terms. So like, and they've all come together to understand that I'm the one that they come to ask things that they can't get the answers from, no matter how much their straight parents try and give them the
Yeah.
answer. my sisters come to me for the answers now because they're like, okay, I want to understand this gender thing. Okay, first of all, it's not a thing.
Right.
Second of all, putting it in air quotes doesn't make it more respectful.
Right.
If you don't understand about something, just ask a question. You don't have to be so PC about the way that you ask it. Be honest about your ignorance. You're okay to be ignorant. You're not supposed to know everything, but that's kind of the delusion of parents, isn't it? I'm supposed to provide everything, know everything, do everything for my child. Well, that society puts that on you, frankly. That's that's part of the toxic binary, as far as I'm concerned, to say that parents should already know better. Well, what if they didn't have examples in parents or grandparents to them? Society certainly doesn't give you an example how to raise your children.
I know, and I think this is common amongst, so I'm the first year of the millennial generation, right? So I'm 40, not far behind you, but
I'm sort of on the edge.
On that cusp. And I've found, and it's talked a lot about kind of older millennials, having to reparent myself while parenting children. And I think actually probably the biggest step forward for me is to understand and to admit to my children, I don't know. Okay,
our parents never did that.
Right.
Ever. They blindly, you know what we're doing. Get out of the way.
Right.
So they didn't.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. It's and then it opens conversation of oh, well, how about we just go Google this together and learn about it together. And
I'm hopeful for them with their children in that respect, because it's a shame that we had to reparent ourselves, because I had to do the same. And I've actually heard some kind of rumblings in my sisters and my brother's relationships that they seem to be doing the same thing too, around about the same time. Is, they're sort of looking at their children and going, damn, I just sounded like my mother.
Right.
Oh, no.
Right.
I'm not going to be speaking to my children that way, because I remember what that did to me at 6. I'm not going to do that. That actively, cognitively recognizing the patterns is already changing everything. So even if you are only doing that and recognizing that what you're doing, you don't want to repeat, you're already a cycle breaker, even if you don't get it right. And honestly, I have to say this, and I say this to every single parent. I'm not a parent, but I've observed a lot of parents in 45 years, and nobody does it right.
That's right.
Nothing. Nobody. Listen, there's a reason why there's so many parent groups, mothers groups, fathers groups, because you're all trying to support each other, because everyone expects you in society to know what you're doing, and nobody gives you a manual. It's like trying to learn TikTok. People are like, how have you got 13,000 people on TikTok? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't look at me.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. I can't help you. I'm sorry. Because it's a similar scenario, because even if you copied exactly what I did on TikTok, you wouldn't get the same numbers or outcomes.
Right.
It's the same with children. Stop trying so damn hard and just be honest. Because at the end of the day, when a child gets to about 3, probably even earlier, they can already tell if you're lying. They can tell if you're lying. They can tell if you are keeping something from them. They can tell when you don't know what you're doing. They can tell when you're scared. They can tell when you're upset. So most children, anyway, are that intuitive to their caregiver. And that's probably why we're so fragile to damage when we're young, because we're so in tune to our caregiver. And if, like in my situation, your situation, you have a caregiver who is not up to the job, period, then it causes all kinds of development problems that we had to do out later. And then if you then end up being a parent, well, God help you. If you're trying to already parent yourself, and then you got to parent another human. Yeah. No, thank you. That was a job I always knew I was never qualified for. Thank you very much. No.
I just tell my children, especially my oldest, a little less infrequently these days, but I just tell them, you know what? I'm just giving you more to talk to your therapist about. That's just really my job.
See, that's the other thing. Therapy, right? Yeah. So therapy is important, I think, because especially to people in our generation, because we weren't given the permission to speak. We've been quietened. Shh, sit down, be quiet, stop moving, do as you're told. You don't have an opinion. This is what you're going to do, right? So when you then get into adulthood or late 20s, you realize that you've got all this stuff inside you that no one's ever even heard. Whether or not that has any effect on who you are now, it's at least baggage you need to get out and put down and stop carrying with you. because it will affect the life. And even if that means that, for example, in somebody very close to me, their partner reached out to me and said, this is turning up in our relationship around our new child. And I was just wondering, because you knew this person when they were younger, did they have any of this go on in their lives, and whether there was anything in their childhood, because they don't talk about it. And I'm like, well, first of all, red flag, because if they're not talking about their childhood or in therapy, there's something there that needs to be talked about. Because if it was all bells and roses, and they'd be talking about, right?
Right.
So, but also it's very relevant to say that when children come along is the only time that will then come up, because he never would have been triggered if he hadn't had a baby. Because I think it's a very, very specific trigger, having children, because it's not 5 minutes.
No,
It's 24/7 forever.
Right.
So, and people who don't have children don't really ever understand just how relentless it is. And that it will bring up and bear you to the bone of all the things you think you safely locked away when you left home. That you would never, I'm never going to be that person. Yeah, and then boom, you've got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and you're ready to just walk out into traffic, like because you run out of ideas. A lot of time you run out of, because again, nobody's giving you a manual, are they? So it's something I always knew I couldn't do, but it's something that I always admire in other people. But it's something that self-parenting specifically, something that I came to a few years ago when I realized that I was able to do that. Whereas I always thought that things like inner child work and reparenting yourself was all namby-pamby, wishy-washy, yoga mums with their chai tea bullshit, frankly. And that love and light attitude of that whole kind of yogi white specifically yogi area is actually really toxic, because a lot of it is just paper over, and here's your new reality. When actually we know you cannot build a house on sand. You've got to build a proper foundation, and that works by working out where's your stuff coming from. Because as a parent, you say to a child, how do you feel in your body? Where's this coming from? You feel icky, you feel tired icky, angry icky. What is it that you're feeling? And then you get to talk to them about where that could be coming from, right? So already you've got the language of saying this is how you feel, and what you feel is relevant, but you don't want to feel like this. Let's figure out how to stop that. So like that was never given to me ever. So
I'm with you there.
As an adult, it's actually very uncomfortable to have that conversation with yourself in the mirror and say, why are you crying right now? You just seen a Kleenex advert. Why are you crying? No. Are you on your period? No. Are you tired? No. Are you hungover? Whatever it is, I'm sober, but like what is it that's and those, just starting that conversation with myself in a kind manner, instead of, because that's the other thing you have to undo is the language. You have to undo, if you've had an abusive parent like I have, you have to undo passive aggressive and out aggressive language that's in your head that says, come on, suck it up, get on with it. You have to go to work, blah, 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 blah. You haven't got time to cry. You mustn't cry. You're weak. Da, da, da. Whatever messages it is, those have to be undone as well. And like, I think that like, if you are able to do that and you're able to start that conversation, you then start having conversations with your inner child. And this is where I sound all wanky and yogi and a little bit Buddhist. And I'm not Buddhist, I'm not remotely religious. But
I'll just call you granola. That's what.
Yeah, I'm more of a tracker bar, but like, it's one of those things where I'd never really understood about the flow of energy, right? So in other words, if you put positivity into something, you will 100% get positivity out. If you put negativity into it, the chances are you're not going to get positivity. It doesn't mean you won't, but it doesn't. So, and in that, if you use that analogy for language, it is very, very simple. It's very simple. Because, and I had some real ugly cry moments in the shower and in my bathroom and in the darkness, where I was like, there's been this inner child inside me. There are several, because they are at different ages, but there's been these inner children inside me all this time, in the dark, in silence. And that, when I realized that, just that fact, I broke down, because I was like, I've been ignoring you. I've been complaining about everyone ignoring me for 40 years plus, and yet I've been doing it to myself. What the fuck? Okay, so let's have this conversation. So these conversations happened. This was my big pandemic lockdown revelation. Mine personally was that in the first year of the lockdown, I was like, this is easy. I can do this, not see people.
Right.
I got you. Like, because most of my life's on digital. I have a lot of anxiety in my body anyway, social anxiety and various other things that we're nailing down to other conditions. So I realized I'm an introvert, I'm an extroverted introvert. I also realized that there was a lot of things that were still uncomfortable. I couldn't understand what it was. I didn't really get that there was, and then I joined TikTok. And the moment I joined TikTok, something different happened. So I've been on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. What else is there? There's like loads, Twitch. There's loads that I've been on for, almost 8 years now, because I was on a media blackout before that because of my mental health. And when I moved down to where I live now on the Isle of Wight on the south coast of England, I went back online because it was quite an isolated rural area. So all of those communities were already there, and that helped a lot in the first lockdown because I already had people, and I spent my time regulating my contact with people by setting calendar dates. So on a certain time every day, on a particular day of the week, I would message about 24 people to see if I was putting signals out. It was like Walking Dead. I was sitting there just to see if anything came back.
Right.
And basically the message was, you don't have to respond to this, but if you want to, I'm here.
Yeah.
And so that, and what I realized was that community was fantastic. But when I joined TikTok, what I realized was there was a whole area missing from my socials, and it was there woven between it. But it's what you do when you're queer is you weave yourself into the straight presenting, because there is no queer woodwork space, there is no queer sports space, and so you have no choice. We're raised in a straight heterosexual cis world, and we have to adjust to it. But what TikTok gave me was that queer room. It gave me that room where I could literally control the feed that was coming in and make sure with the right clicks and watching time that I developed a For You page that was full of Black people of Indian people, Pakistani people, all kinds of religions, and all kinds of sexualities and gender identities. And I was constantly hearing about non-binary, and I I'm educated. I know what non-binary is. Always knew what non-binary was, but the fact is, because it uses the word non, I have this defiance disorder where I'm like, I will not erase myself by calling myself non-binary. Fuck that. And it's like, well, okay, but what if it's the only thing there is right now? Okay. So I was like, all right, well, what if that is me? And the moment I started having that conversation back in 2020, I was like, oh shit, I have to come out again. I have to. And honestly, I thought it would be easy. I honestly thought that it would be easier than being gay.
Today's episode is sponsored by Athena Outfitters. Athena Outfitters is a quality workwear brand for hardworking women that sells everything badass beauties need to get the job done, from work boots to basics. They curate the toughest essentials made to help you perform. Every piece is handpicked to seamlessly slide right into your daily lifestyle, from rugged and roguish weekday wear to effortless weekend flair. You can fill your closet with gear that can do it all. So for Christmas, I ordered my wife like a very nice pair of slippers from Athena Outfitters, and she loves them. Loves them so much that she has accidentally gone to the gym and the grocery store in them because they seem to never leave her feet. So definitely a place to go check out, go get the goods that help you not only out in the shop, but just in your daily work around the house and outdoors. As a listener of the podcast, you can go to Athena Outfitters website and use coupon code MM as in M&Ms 15 for 15% off any purchase. So again, you go to athenaoutfitters.com and use the code MM15 and get 15% off of your purchase at checkout.
Because when you're gay, you're constantly having to out yourself and talk about your sex life, because that's what you're doing. So oh my God, are you a lesbian? What's it got to do with you? I'm not sleeping with you.
Right. Yeah.
Are you into big ones or little ones? That's right. It's none of my business. Straight girl, off you go. So like, you know,
I had a ex-girlfriend who once, and it's always stuck with me. She said, when you come out, if you're, female and you come out to somebody, they instantly see two vaginas together. And if you're male and you come out, they instantly see two penises together. Like that's right where their mind goes, which is interesting. I mean, to your point, if I know somebody's straight, I am not thinking about what the hell they do in the bedroom.
No.
Like, because none of my business. I don't want to know.
No, but and honestly, that's what queer people do. Is queer people think, oh, who are you with then?
Yeah.
Who's your partner? They don't think, what are you doing? Whereas we deny heterosexual cis people the ability to have the education when they're young to understand that they aren't the only ones. There isn't the only way. And the only way that we stop the ignorance and hate that comes to our community is by education as young as your kids are now. Mm-hmm. And that's why queer parents are so important to changing the world, because not only are we a generation of people that are cycle breaking for the first time in generations, but we're also in that cycle breaking, having conversations with our children that our parents never had. Yeah. So my upbringing was very homophobic and transphobic.
Same.
In fact, it was sport. So like, and then in my father's, what I realized in my father's circle on the other side, because my parents are divorced, I divorced when I was like 8, so it's not a new thing. Yeah. And his side was all very passive aggressive. So it would be, oh, well, we'll take Lee because, Lee's the, number one son. There would be these backhanded compliments that I would accept, because although I was being abused in that moment because I was having my gender constantly questioned and bullied. A very good example I use very often is the birthday before last. So my birthday's in December. So not last December, December before. Was the last time I accepted it. It was the last time that I sat there on my own birthday, surrounded by half a dozen of my family, opening a pink birthday card with Minnie Mouse on it saying, birthday girl. Now, this is a very deliberate ploy by my father because this is his sense of humor. Okay, so to watch me squirm in my gender identity is sport in the family. And I sat there and looked around me and I was like, wow, they're literally waiting for the entertainment, which is me to either make a joke about it, my own self, or to scoff, get angry, whatever buttons it was, I'm the entertainment. And I walked away and realized that they've been doing that my whole life, that I've been the joke, the gender joke of the family. If there's a boys thing, Lee'll do it. And I ended up calling myself not a proper girl. The kids would say, oh, but I'm going to do this like you. And I'm like, but I'm not a proper girl, am I? So you're going to have to go and ask mum how to do them braids because I don't know how to do braids. Oh, yeah, that's right. And it became like, you're not a proper adult because you're not conforming to what is the other adults who are female are doing. They're getting married, they're having these careers as nurses and doctors and all this sort of stuff because they all went to university while I was trying to not unalive. So I never got a degree. So even that much, disenfranchisement in my family meant that I didn't feel like I had the right to say anything to correct them. So like when I then started to correct them last year, everything kicked off. Because apparently you can accept that you've got a gay child, but you can't accept that you've got a child that challenges what you called them. So that was my dad stamped his feet and shook his fist at the screen and was like, nope. Came into my house, did the same thing. I will not call you Leo. And I didn't even shout. I was like, that's okay. You don't have to, but you won't be coming to my house anymore. And I'm not going to argue with you because this is fact now. It's fact. Because the moment I acknowledged it to myself and had that conversation in the mirror by myself, something released from my body. And I was actually really bereft and depressed and grief stricken at first. People were like, oh, celebrate. Yeah, amazing. Let's have a coming out party. And I was like, what's to celebrate? I've spent 45 years calling myself a girl and a female and knowing it was wrong, but not knowing why. And now I know why. And I've denied myself the ability to be exactly really who I am this whole time. Me. No one else did it. I did it.
Yeah. I want to ask this question because I've heard this question. I don't know if you listen to Glennon Doyle's podcast or not, but she's been having quite a few, I would say, genderqueer individuals on the podcast. And I love this question because it's one that I struggle with just like her. And that is, how do you experience gender? Is it something that you like feel inside and it's like, yes, that's me? Or is it, I mean, yeah, how do you experience it? Like, how does it feel?
That's a really, really great question, because it's not one that gets asked enough. And I think it should be asked of everybody, regardless of their identity, because I'm fascinated by it myself, and actually think that it might be the next rabbit hole that I fall down as far as getting another few credits towards trying to get an associate. So is to do gender studies and understand the identity within as well as externally, because externally I've always dressed as a boy because there was no other option other than frilly dresses, which I knew were completely wrong. So and for me, like, I've been asked before if I'm gender fluid because I don't want to take testosterone. I don't want to be any more masculine presenting than I already am. At the same time, I don't want to be any more feminine. But so as far as how do I feel about gender, the majority of the time, I kind of feel like I kind of sit in a kind of a sort of swinging pendulum in between. So like if you say girls over here, all the way over the left, and boys all the way over in the right, somewhere in the middle, there's me, who sometimes swings a little bit to one side and sometimes the other. That never changes externally. I always wear pretty androgynous, nondescript, not men's clothing specifically. If there was androgynous clothing, I would buy it, but there isn't. So I buy the most neutral colours I can. I wear a lot of black. I wear a lot of straight-legged jeans that don't have any fitting to them, to have a nondescript body. Because as for me, in society, I only really feel gendered when other people gender me. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't really have a gender. Sitting in the middle, so there are some people that say non-gender, but sitting in the middle for me covers both bases, because there are aspects of my body that are inescapably female. My hips, for example, I won't take testosterone to slim my hips because they don't bother me. The only dysmorphia I get as far as gender and body is my breasts. And I will be having top surgery to see if I can have that corrected. But yeah, as far as feeling gender, there's funny because sometimes I feel really masculine. So like there are times when I get so much euphoria from just seeing a really well-hanging shirt. Well, a well-hanging shirt for me is one that will hang straight down. I automatically roll my shoulders forward. I've been doing it since I was 11, since I got these things. I learned that if I walk around with my shoulders rolled forward, that my shirt will hang in front and go all the way down to my belly, and you won't see anything. So the days that I feel masculine gender euphoria is when that happens, and there's no definable, for everybody and myself in the mirror, you can't tell, is that girl or boy? To me, that's where I get my gender euphoria, but not because some people like to play a game with other people and say, oh, am I a girl or a boy today? That's not me. I'm not gender fluid. I'm neither and both at the same time. So for me, if people can't tell who or what I am, to what box to put in, that's my gender. There isn't a box for my gender because I don't really have a gender, because gender's a made-up construct. And the made-up options don't fit. So therefore, I have no identity. So it's almost worse. It's that they have no identity. And that's the other thing about identity. So coming out as gay is one thing, right? Because you can hold that in reserve. Like in work, you don't necessarily have to out yourself at work. You know, but I had to out myself at work. I had to out myself at the doctors, for travel, for all kinds of things. I've had to out myself as being non-binary, and then sit with the uncomfortable feeling that we all get when we out anything about ourselves, or the questions that you don't want to answer. I don't want to tell you why or who I am, so that it makes you feel better, or that so that you've got a little soundbite over dinner with your wife when you go home. Oh, I met a non-binary today, because you know that's how the conversation goes. Because I don't want to be anybody's freak story. Thank you very much. I'm just trying to live my life with as little as tension as possible, which is why I don't fight everybody over pronouns.
I really appreciate you describing that. Like I said, it's something that I've like seriously been trying to ask myself internally, and I don't know where I fit either. To be quite honest,
So
I
make your
know,
own box. Make your
yeah.
own box, because at the end of the day, you know, how you're perceived is one box, how you
Mhm.
perceive yourself is another, and how society sees you is a third. Because you know, society in general, for example, society in general is what I talk about, hey, like medical records, for example.
Mhm.
So traveling, I'm traveling under my dead name. I'm
Yeah.
traveling, and I've this is the first time that I've traveled in a binder.
Mhm.
So, and I feel very dysphoric if I don't wear my binder outside the house now, to the point where I won't leave the house to go to the shops. If I
Mhm.
can't put it on, I'll just stay at home. So traveling through TSA, for example, I'm being patted down because I always get stopped because I have an Iraqi name. I've never been
Mhm.
to Iraq, neither has my dad, but it's an Iraqi name and it's on a list. So
Mhm.
TSA always double swab me for explosives, and they always pat my body down. And they're like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "It's an underwear." "Well, what's this in your bra?" "It's just underwear." And like both TSAs, obviously they were female, both of them looked at me and were like, oh, okay. And then just took the hands off me. And it's
Mhm.
like, there needs to be some kind of sensitivity training or something done for people to understand that, you know, I'm obviously not, you know what my dead name is. I'm obviously
Yeah.
not that
Right.
feminized person. I'm
Right.
obviously not a she, you know, and I it the oh is fine, except what people don't understand is when they do that, when you've been assaulted for being who you are, that's the first red flag.
Mhm.
Because the first red flag is shock, the second one is confusion, the third one is rage that they can't figure out what you are,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you get attacked. And my brain goes, we're so vulnerable right now.
Mhm.
Who saw that conversation? Who heard that? Who's in the line with
Right.
me?
Right.
I need to slip everything into my things, put my mask back on and my hoodie up, and just disappear into the crowd now because I'm not safe anymore.
Mhm.
I've been taught to do that my whole life. So it's not new to being non-binary. It's just that now I know why.
Yeah.
Now I know why I was always a target. And I never knew why until now, because no one gave me the language.
Yeah.
And there's no way I would have called myself trans. I still can't
Mhm.
always say trans. I'm getting better at it. I understand better what trans actually means,
Mhm.
and that I'm allowed to use it, and that I'm trans enough.
Mhm.
All of this I've been through therapy over the last year about. And actually, I would suggest that anybody who has any questionings about the box that they were put in, if it doesn't feel like your box, go to therapy and talk about being in that box and possibly another as well.
Mhm.
You know, you can be in more than one box.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you could still be a mum and female and use they, them, because
Right.
you're not all the way over onto the left to the female or all the way over to the male either. And I think that a lot of queer women are in that pendulum swinging area
Mhm.
where, especially if they've got kids, because they swing over to the mum side, but then they also got the ability to give some what would be traditionally called father subjects to
Right.
their child as well. If anything, they're more versatile as a parent than people who are in the binary.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I,
About that, why?
yeah.
What's wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I know like there's just a few things like I've realized I finally, I mean, setting boundaries anyways is difficult for me to do. Um, it's become something that's like, so important that I have to do. And so like one that's come up recently, and I know it's coming from friends who I consider like true friends on social media, um, that fit into the same kind of like you're talking about pendulum swing as me,
Mhm.
and them calling me dude, and it really rubbing me like it just
Mhm.
it's like it doesn't, I'm like please, like I cringe, like I almost
Yeah,
recoil when I see
yeah,
it
yeah.
because I'm like that doesn't feel
I'm
right,
not a
like
dude.
I'm not a dude.
Yeah.
But then I also feel like when we talk about like conferences and stuff, like I have several, again, maker community friends that like go to Haven conference, and they're always like, why won't you come? And I'm like, because I do not fit there. Like
Mhm.
I see what that is across social media, and
I don't know what that is, but is it?
it's for like it's for bloggers mainly. So that's one reason I don't belong. But the other reason is 98% female and high femme female.
Oh, okay. I would,
Dress
yeah.
into the nine and
No, I
heels
wouldn't
and all of
understand
that.
it. No, I wouldn't
Yeah.
understand. And both of us have friends on Instagram.
Yeah.
Several I can think of in the top of my head that are very, very femmy
Yes.
all the way. They're brilliant. There's, by the way, gender has nothing to do with their woodworking ability. No, and that's not what we're talking about. Because some of these people are some of the most advanced woodworkers I've ever seen, you know, but they are so feminine. I've got nothing in common with you except woodwork.
Yep.
I can't talk to you about your shows that you watch. I don't watch them. Your hair, your nails, your makeup, your clothes, your shoes. I don't care. None of that's important to me. You know, and actually, you know, I find it difficult to find subjects like that to talk to people about. Otherwise, it's just another reason why I don't go to conferences at all. Because these workbench things are all, you know, good and thing. But then once that exhibition stopped and everyone's talking amongst themselves, first of all, I hate small talk anyway.
Yeah.
But second of all, what am I going to talk to you about? I don't even have a dog anymore. So, like, I have nothing. You know, I don't care about your snot gobblers. I don't care about your, you know, your pregnancy. I care. I mean, care is a strong, not caring. I don't mean that. I say that all the time now because I say it makes the kids laugh because they'll say, well, I hurt my finger, it's bleeding. And I go, I don't care. And they go, what? And I'm like, I'm just kidding. Come on, let me see. Because it's a kind of a reflex now. And I say it to a lot of things. And Joe's like, do you realise that you just said you don't care about it? I was like, oh, I don't mean it like that. So I've got to stop saying that. But, you know, it's a relevant point is to say, if you don't fit in them circles, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that we don't fit in them circles, you know. And what is that like for other people? Like I've often asked straight, you know, cisgendered females that are in our industry of making, whether it be welders or, as you know, I've got a few friends in different trades as far as, you know, Instagram goes. What's it like? And they're like, well, I don't understand what you mean. Because the point is they never even have to question half the things we have to put into a conversation first. The fact that we even discuss not going to something because of XYZ, they're like, but that's why I go. And that's why we're not going to the same event. You know, and that whole, I understand that whole language thing as well. It's like I try very hard on my Instagram to say, the one I do use guys, but I try not to say you guys as much as I do, because I know that the word guy also is quite triggering to some people. But I have a very, very good friend, one of my best friends, who will just turn up in my text and just be like, dude, like, you know, loads of those letters. Or like, bro, listen. And I know she's straight. Like, and I know that what she's doing is that's the language she uses with her male friends online because she's a gamer. And that is just like me saying don't care, it's an automatic reflex. So with her specifically, I don't bring her up on it because but with other people, if just online, if they say dude, I'm like, I'm not a dude. Be polite, because, you know, it's actually quite offensive to call someone like me male. And you don't really understand that it's not a compliment, right? To be called male.
And really I think at least from my past history, when I think of a very specific, you know, place that I worked and my boss was a man, and the only way he seemed to be able, like we did, like he was a woodworker, like as a hobby, you know, and I did woodworking as a hobby, and he was into mechanics or whatever, and I could talk that language with him. And so, like, I'm very much pregnant having conversations with him, and he's very clearly talking to me like I'm a man. And like, and in the fact of like objectifying women, you know what I mean? Like that kind of,
and it's almost like they think because I'm having that conversation with you that it makes it acceptable because there's a non-male involved in that conversation. It's the same whenever you talk to someone who's clearly racist and they start to say, excuse me, first of all, no, period. Doesn't matter who you're talking to. Second of all, not in my company ever. Goodbye. Third of all, be aware I'm of Arab descent. So if you want to sit here, and Jewish descent at that, if you want to sit here, you need to be careful, bro. Because, you know, this is, and it's like, it's exactly the same thing with toxic masculinity. You know, I several people who have male children, and I have corrected them for their parent and said, hold up, we're not doing that. We're in a family friendly get together here. I'm not going to have that kind of ball scratching toxic masculinity copied from your father and brought into this space.
Right.
This is what you're doing, and this is why it's offensive. And the children are old enough to know that conversation, because they do that at school already. This is good. This is bad. Do you want to be good or bad? Up to you. And that binary is kind of how they can understand. And I've had kids just sit there and go, fuck, no one's ever said that to me. Like, no, because daddy's encouraging it,
right?
Because he wants you in his image, and anything outside the binary as far as your parents doesn't exist. So God help them if you turn out to be queer of any kind of kind. And that's the thing, is like saying it's okay to correct people in a kind way and explain, you know. And if they can't, like in a work situation, it's difficult because you have a kind of boundary. And
and in my situation, there was very much a power dynamic at play, which
and that's always a problem with work. And it's also a problem in families too, because the power dynamic between my father and I has been at odds now for 18 months. Because the last 18 months of my non-binary journey, he's done nothing but make me push a rock up the hill, you know, and we go forward and then back and then forward and back. And I am so exhausted with the whole thing. I'm about ready to just go, nope, not doing it anymore. If you can't respect me, don't come to my house. Don't call me. We work together, unfortunately, so it's very difficult. But it's funny how my work colleagues picked it up within the first meeting, and none of them have dropped a pronoun or my name since. And that's been a year since I came out at work. And funny how he has been corrected by them. And I've walked in on conversations in Zoom, unfortunately, uncomfortable situations where I've walked in and he's talking about me before the meeting started, and then corrected himself. And, oh, hi, Lee. Yeah, that's right. You lose my name here. You don't use it at home during family meal, but that's okay, because this is where you're going to stay, clearly. You can stay here in this work environment. And that's the thing about boundaries, Katie, is that you and I have discussed boundaries before and how absolutely vital they are in any relationships, that's children, relationships with partners, family, parents, work. And the worst thing about boundaries is when you have to place one that you absolutely know is true. For example, I want to be called Lee. If he's not going to call me Lee, and this was my first stance after the first 6 months, then I'm not going to talk to you, period. When you text me, I'm not going to respond. I'm going to leave you on red. And I'm going to passively aggressively ignore you until you start doing what I want you to do.
Right.
Because that's what society has been doing to us since we were born. Push, 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 push into this female mold. Push, push, push. You must get married. You must have children. You must do this. You must bleed. You must not get rid of your uterus. You must do this. You must have medication to control your this and the other. You know, and it's like, what if I did the same thing to him until he came around to the boundary? And what happened was, we ended up having a conversation where I was trying to explain. It's funny, he's just texted me. You must know I'm talking about him. I was trying to explain to him, you've raised me to be intelligent and forthright about what things that are in my life and that upset me or whatever. And we've always talked about all of them until it comes to this one, because you don't want to do this one. Do you see how you're literally at odds with yourself, old man? Because you want me to be the best human I can be in the world, but you're literally stopping me right now, you know. And he went away and didn't talk to me for about 10 days. He actually told me to go fuck myself, because I said, I've asked for a boundary of no contact and you keep texting me. Well, fuck you then. Yeah, that's what happens. That's the worst part about boundaries, because people, when you put them in place, will kick off at you, tell you that it's toxic, tell you that you're demanding, tell you that how dare you tell me what to do? I'm your father, or you can't do this with you can do it with everyone else, but I'm 75 years old and I shouldn't have to change now. I've called you this for the rest of all of your life, and I changed you when you were a baby. And I said, okay, cool. That's your boundary. You want that. Well, here's what I want. We don't meet in the middle. So what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Because I'm prepared to meet you this point and say, okay, pronouns might be a bit hard for you, but you will call me Lee. And he's kicked back and kicked back. And one thing that I've learned out of doing boundaries before this, thankfully, this isn't my first rodeo as far as boundaries go with people who don't want to set boundaries because they don't like. See, this is the thing. If you don't like a boundary, you're the reason it needs to be there.
It's absolutely true. Yeah.
So, because I've never had a problem with a boundary that I knew needed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've ever had a problem with a boundary is when someone's tried to place a boundary with me and I have questions about why that boundary has been put in place. And the conversation, see, when people do boundaries clumsily, they'll just go, I don't want to talk to you. Okay, that's okay. You don't have to talk to me. But what I need are a couple of bits of information. First of all, for how long?
Right.
Second of all, is there any communication allowed? Because you can't, it's not black and white, you know. And thirdly, is this something I can do anything about? Or are we done? Because if we're done, don't just say, I don't want to talk to you. Say we're done. Because that's a very clear boundary. We're done. There's something I can't repair for you. Okay, bye. On with your life. But otherwise, you've got to explain to people that you're putting a boundary in place because of this. You don't accuse them, but you say, I feel this. I sentences. I need this. I feel this. I would like this. Ta-da, your turn. And if they come back at you, go, what, you're attacking me. I used I words. How am I attacking you?
Right.
So, and then you know that you're talking to the right person about a boundary, because that visceral reaction to anyone making demands, and I put that in air quotes because it's not demanding unless it's something you don't want to do. And then it feels like a demand. It's a request from someone. It's a request to say, I would like to have a relationship with you, but these are the boundaries we need for me to feel safe in our friendship or in our relationship, work, family, whatever it is. So to me, it's a reasonable negotiation of how you interact with people. And if the person doesn't want to have a reasonable conversation about how to interact with you, they're not going to be able to interact with you. And if it's a family member like my dad, what I'm discovering is it's okay to put people in certain boxes. And that isn't to say he's allowed special dispensation to like treat me like shit or to call me my dead name. It just means that I am emotionally detaching from his reactions. Yeah. So when he does something unkind, says something unkind, or like recently let me down very severely when it was my 7-year anniversary for my soberversary, if you like, and my family were on board with having a sober meal to celebrate. 2 hours before the meeting, he decided that he couldn't and that it was too demanding on him. And so I said, okay, see you later. Yeah, I'll probably see you tomorrow for a walk. I didn't. I shut the door. He drove away and I broke down because I was like, I'm going to have to place a boundary here that's going to be very uncomfortable. So I text my sisters. I said, I won't be there for dinner and I won't be there for the rest of the weekend for Easter either. If you want to see me, come to my house, but I'm not coming to our parents' house because I'm done being around alcohol. And I think I have the right to stand by myself and say, well done. You didn't die at your own hand at alcohol and drugs like you were predicted. You didn't end up in jail. You ended up being an advocate for sober people and for the students to, so like I deserve that respect. So if they're not going to give it to me, I get just as much from giving it to myself. And that's not arrogance. That's how you self-parent. You go, it's okay, darling, come here, I've got you. When someone rejects you, well, you can do that to yourself when a parent rejects you. I've learned that after my mother walked away 7 years ago. You can actually do it yourself, but they have you fooled to believe that they're the only ones that can give you that.
Yeah. Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag Woodworker on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. It's definitely, I will say, with placing boundaries over the last several years with family, it's amazing how much the how much the gaslighting increases.
Yeah, the pushback. The pushback's
Yeah.
incredible, isn't it?
And
it's incredible.
And when it still happens, right? It's like, I'm still not budging on this. This is
Oh, you're still doing that non-binary thing.
Yeah.
The fact you're talking about it like that means we've still got a lot to work to do, clearly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why you didn't get invited to my house at Christmas, and that's why I won't be sending your kids any, gifts or whatever. They'll get the basics from me, because I don't want to be a conversation in your house about the non-binary one or the queer one or whatever. I'm not interested. If you want to educate your kids, fine. But if you want to keep perpetuating the straight ideal. But luckily for me, the parents of the kids in my lives are very open to having their kids exposed to just about every single walk of life, creed, color, race, you name it, because they understand we live in an ethnically diverse world, and not the cis, straight, white country that we were raised to believe is around us. Because it's the same in England as it is in America. You were raised to believe that it's a white country with this and that. And actually, you get outside when you're about 11 or 12, you walk out your door and you go, okay, I can only see like 2 white people and 20 brown, black and blue. Well, what does that mean then?
Yeah.
Because I grew up in the Jamaican West Indian community along with Pakistan, because they were in the 70s and early 80s were our workforce that came over on various literal steamboats from other colonies, because we had a shortage in workforce, and so the communities that I grew up around, the hospitals specifically is where my name came from. So the first place that I lived in South London is a place called Lee Green, which is in Lewisham in South London, which is my mother went to Lewisham Hospital as a student nurse. And there was one other white person in my class. That was Richard Knight, and he was blonde, blue-eyed little boy. And of course, they coupled us up and said, we're going to get married at fucking 6 years old.
Of course they did.
6 years old. It's okay to tell kids that it's about sex and marriage and coupling up, but it's not okay to tell them that about being gay or non-binary or celibate or anything like that. You can't tell anybody about that. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
No.
And I'm trying to move forward in my life to understand that I can take all the lessons that I've already got and help other people with that. And that's all I need to do, is to just teach people how I'm still alive. Because I've already survived addiction to narcotics, addiction to alcohol, a very long addiction to suicidal ideation, which I didn't realize was also an addiction. Self-harm. I've recovered from self-harming for over 20 years. And so there's lots of things that I've turned myself around with that I'm really proud of now. And I always thought that pride was an ego thing, and pride was about, something that should be knocked out of you. Well, that's the church. That's the church not wanting you to be prideful, because you're less able to be controlled if you have ideas of your own. In actual fact, having self-pride is really, really important to self-esteem. And that's not about being egotistical. I'm really good. It's about accepting there are things you are good at, and you're allowed to say, I'm good at that and I like doing it. For example, I taught myself how to do inlays in wood. I didn't watch a YouTube channel. I didn't watch anybody else do it. I was like, I think it's like this. Okay, let me try it this way then. Okay, oh shit, I did it. Okay, how did I do that? And then I worked out my whole process, and I did it all by myself. And that's why I'm proud of that skill. Because I worked it out for myself. I would have gone to YouTube if I had to, and I would have gone to someone and asked if I'd had to. Lucky for me, I didn't know I had talent there, because I was never allowed to explore practical talents. I had to go down the academic way, and when I didn't, I was left on the scrap heap.
Does that include your talent for very small spoons, which I love?
Do you know what? The spoonage is amazing. I love doing spoons because they give me so much peace. They're a really nice little hit of dopamine, especially the tiny, tiny ones that I do that are less than an inch big, because they take maybe an hour to make. And so you get little hits of dopamine. If I sit there with like half a dozen scraps that someone would have used as kindling on their fire, I'm like, don't burn it. If it's warm up, why are you burning it? Well, it's only this big. I can't even make a dowel out of it. I can make a spoon out of it. Give it to me. Send it to me. Send me your scraps. Let them die with me. Because the majority of scraps end up as something. Even if it's just a little pendant that I do a giveaway with, like The finding woodwork gave me a lot of space in my mind to accept new skills in myself, accept my own ability, give myself self-esteem and pride in something new, and also open up the fact that I came to woodwork at 39 years old. So, and I had been told I couldn't do woodwork, I couldn't do an apprenticeship, I wasn't allowed to change careers because I'm too old. I literally had doors slam, 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 slam. No, you're too old. So to be able to say, like, in the last 4 years since I've been doing it, I've actually come so far with skill to a level where other people go, I can't do that. And they've been in woodwork for a lot longer than me. It gives me a lot of pride, and that gives me a lot of self-esteem that I can't get in any other area of my life.
That's why, I mean, I say that making, probably the biggest gift of making is a sense of agency to me, which is, you know, because it's like, no matter if it's a good result or bad result, and I'm going to put those in air quotes, the result is a result of something I did. Like, it's directly affected by like the choice I made.
And you know, do you remember when you first started, right? And you thought you had to get everything right?
Oh yeah.
And you hid your mistakes and you hid your process. You didn't ask for help, and you thought you had to do it all by yourself. Now that is the toxic ideas of a capitalist patriarchy society. For people without male genitalia, what it does to us is makes us believe fundamentally that we have to work harder, that we aren't going to be as good as them, that we have to do more and show off less and ask for help less and be more natural ability, or don't bother telling people you're doing it. But what you, and then you get into Instagram, you're like, oh, I can't show anyone my mistake, I'm just going to put the thing. And this is all unspoken and pressure that's put on us. No one tells us these things. We feel it. So what you realize after your first year is actually the more open you are about your mistakes and your process. For example, there's so much liberation in being a learner. So liberating, saying, I've never done this before, which is going to happen to me in the next couple of years, because I now have a workshop and I'm going to start making boxes. Now, I haven't done joinery since I learned to do woodwork, and I was taught it a few years ago. So I'm going to be opening up that entire process and go, oh shit, here we go, another box joint into the burn pile type thing. And that process gives other people the ability to say, well, I'm going to try then. I might be crap at it. Yeah, you might be crap at it, but you'll always learn something about yourself. You'll either learn, I don't want to do that. I've tried it 8 times. I don't want to do that. Okay, then walk away, because no one says in woodwork, in metalwork, in any medium, that you have to do all the things.
Right.
Like, and everybody says, oh, you got a niche, you got to be popular. No, you got to find what turns you on.
Yep.
What gives you the feeling that you need from what it is that you're doing? Because if you're making to make money, stop making. If you're making because you're trying to get something out of yourself expressed into what it is you're making, that's why you should be making. And it doesn't matter whether the person looking at what you've made sees the same thing as you, because you see it. Right. And that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. You know, I see this in artists a lot of the time. They go, well, and they try and explain their concept, and this color was put here because of this. And then my idea was that, listen, you're not at art school no more. I don't need to see your notes. I don't really care how you got to it. I will ask if I'm interested, but this is a beautiful piece, and this is how I perceive it. And this is where I get from it. In some respects, it's like poetry. I don't read other people's poetry because I will just copy it. I don't watch other people do stuff because I'm just going to copy their process. It's not my process then.
Right.
And I get bored easily from that. And I've recently understood that it's because I've got undiagnosed ADHD, and that the reason why I can't hyper-focus on something that's given to me and why I never could at school is because I need to be interested in investing in that, or I'm not going to do any good in it. And understanding that the only benchmark is the benchmark in your head is a liberating feeling to say, as a learner, if you were a child and you were learning to write your letters and you kept getting your B's and your D's around the wrong way, which many kids do. If somebody was smacking your hand with a ruler every single time you did it, you would stop doing it, wouldn't you? You'd stop doing the thing you were told not to do, but you'd also hate writing.
Yeah.
You'd hate it because of the what you get from it. Right. You do that to yourself when you're a maker. You slap your own wrist. You go, oh, I'm shit at that. I'm not going to do it anymore. How many people in our maker community will pick up a router, can't do it first time, they don't do it again? Because the motivation is, the motivation's either wrong, B, they're being a little bit too egotistical, thinking that they can just pick something up and do it,
Right.
which makes the motivation wrong. Or 3, there's a kind of missing the target idea about, I want the dopamine hit of being able to do something good, but I don't want to have to do all that messiness before it comes.
Yeah.
But they don't realize there's dopamine in that messy bit. Because when you say to yourself, oh, like the worst thing for me, I'm doing an inlay, I've made a beautiful pendant, and then I come to the dangerous part, which is messing it up with an inlay, right? And I work in tropicals, so like you'll have walnut or you'll have like purple heart. This is not cheap bits of wood. And I'll put a lot of work into getting a finished like glass before I'll even do the inlay. And then if it goes wrong, there's a very, very easy line from that to I'm stupid, I'm dumb, throw it across the room. And to be honest, when I first started, that's what it was like. I was throwing things across the room. But what I then realized was, you're a dumbass. You have to go and get that now. And you're going to start again, and you're going to try again, because if your child keeps getting something wrong, you don't give up on them. You make them do it again, and you explain to them how they did it wrong and how to perhaps do it right again and what they thought about it. And so if you do that the same to yourself and you go, damn it, I messed up that. What did I do? Okay, what did I do? Now, Instagram helps me with that, because I'm like, right, I'm going to post this. Right. I'm going to write this down on the Instagram post for myself to go, right, what did I do here? I think what I did here wrong was I cut this at a certain angle and I rushed this. I was a bit tired last night and I put and I put all that there. What I realized coming back was the amount of people out there who need to hear that, who need to be given the permission to validate their own failures. Validate your failure, because if you're not making mistakes, then you are not learning, because nobody learns from getting it right off the bat. Like my Jo's training as a phlebotomist right now. She's just qualified to be a 2, which means that she can now do treatment injections, which is a bigger needle. It's all very common. But she aced the first few, and I was like, that's great, well done, brilliant day. But when did you get something wrong? When did you get? Oh, I haven't. I'm like, okay. So what do you mean? I'm like, I'll celebrate your victories, but I'm not going to celebrate until you've done something wrong. Because until you've done something wrong, you don't know how to really do the good thing. You know, get it right is easy. Sometimes it's just luck. Oh, I know how to do that now. Do you? Do it 10 times. Do it 10 times. If you can do it 10 times in a row, exactly the way you did it the first time, great. You obviously have a natural talent in that ability. You've nothing more to learn. Move on to the next thing. But unless you're learning that way through mistakes in woodwork, I honestly don't think you learn how not to go down that wrong mistake again.
Right.
You know, like it's like learning about different glues and stuff. I never understood that when I was learning woodwork, that there are different types of glues for different situations. Well, you learn that pretty quick. If you use the wrong wood glue for outside furniture, or vice versa.
Right.
You know, and but the thing, and that's the other thing about woodwork, I just want to say as we finish up, is to say that the other humbling thing is to remember there are thousands of areas of woodwork specifically I can only speak on. So there's lots of different niche areas. There's something for everybody. There is something for everybody, and nobody needs to stay where they are. I might always be known for tiny spoons and inlays and little bits of jewelry, because that's where I had to go without a workshop. Right. But now that I've got a workshop, I can re-expand that, get myself a bandsaw as the next thing, and try bandsaw boxes. And I'll get it wrong. I'll get it wrong over and over. And I'm excited to get it wrong, Katie. I actually enjoy, I get a little dopamine hit when something works, yeah. But it ain't nothing like the kick when I get something wrong and I go, okay. And then I get it right. From learning from that mistake. That's a double dopamine hit right there. And that's why when you make a mistake, good, look at it well.
I know there's not a single thing I've made that I didn't make a mistake while making it. Like there's always something goes wrong every single time. That's
you're
like
very
the only
innovative.
guarantee.
You're always trying things that are different, you see.
Yeah.
Like you're always trying to expand and push yourself into an idea, creative concept. So you're always going to feel like you're getting it wrong if you're breaking new ground all the time.
Yeah, true.
It's a natural feeling to think, well, that didn't go as planned. No, because there was no plan before the one you made. No one's ever done that before.
Right.
That way. So if anything, there's more humility in what you do and more liberation to get it wrong, because it's like, hi, no one's done this before. So, you know, I don't care if you judge me, especially to the voice in your head, because the thing that the voice in your head doesn't put into the equation is you tried it. You thought it out. you practiced it, it didn't work. So you go back and you will thought it out again with that mistake in mind, and perhaps you will, but maybe you won't. Either way, the fact that you keep getting up and keep trying to put your ideas and your art and your feelings into practical, physical things is a gift to the world, no matter how it happens. Because those that don't do envy those that do.
I think, I mean, kind of full circle back, I think though, to be real, I don't feel like I've ever, as a kid, yes, maybe afraid of failure, but definitely even as a very young adult, I think I always saw the value in failure, like always. Like like you, it's all like, well, I'm not going to learn if I don't fuck it up. Like I'm just not going to. So I definitely saw the value, but I think also it's come back to my kids, my oldest especially, who's very they both are very creative, artistic, but he really struggled for quite some time with this idea of it has to be perfect the first time. And and so I've been able to just like show him like some of my pieces and like, okay, you see this, what do you think of this? Well, that's really cool. Well, what if I told you that the reason it looks that way is because of a massive mistake?
Right.
I like had no intention of making. That's the only reason it looks that way.
Right.
And then kind of this back and forth of like, oh, okay. And so it's like seeing less of him like crumpling up the paper and throwing it away because it's not perfect. And it's like,
I think they all go through that stage, don't they? Because there's a frustration with a child where they see something in their mind and then try and draw it, and it doesn't look the same as it does in their mind. And they're getting them to understand that it probably never will, because the brain can never be reproduced. So what, the amazing dreams and the amazing colors and the amazing, imaginary creatures you come up with in your brain can't ever be put onto reality, onto paper in that respect. But yeah, it's difficult for young'uns to understand. But I think that if you approach yourself with the same humility and kindness that you approach a child making a mistake, you'll get a lot more out of whatever it is you're trying to do, even if that's just, and I say just because it's actually it's still a skill, but I was still going to say like decorating, but I know some very, very skilled decorators. You can't just pick up a brush and do it. Like it's very skilled. And it's like, even if that's what you're doing, like just be patient to remember that if you were watching your 10-year-old do it and they made a mistake, you'd be like, it's okay. Let's try again. Well, do that to yourself. That's where the self-parenting comes into the humility of woodwork and being a learner, is to be kind to the way that you speak. And that goes back to the 2020. So the things that changed where I started talking to myself kindly, I started self-parenting myself, I started a conversation with my inner children, and that led to me coming out as non-binary. And honestly, that a year, 18 months later, I can say that I feel so much less weighed down. I feel more oppressed and more in danger, because I realized that I have made myself more of a target and more of a subject to more conversation than I wish to be in. But I understand that those are the things that caged me, and that they're not as big as I thought they were. And it's better to be here now as I am, talking about it, being the person that I needed to see 30 years ago. And I never saw that person on social media, or it didn't exist. Social media didn't exist then, but TV, radio, that person didn't exist. It's funny because the other day I realized that most of the people I followed when I was, a tween were gay. Queen, Eurasia, Pet Shop Boys, like what? And the comedians, Eddie Izzard, like, and there will be names that I would drop that you wouldn't know, but in British culture there was a lot of sitcom comedies in the 70s and 80s, and the punchline was always the gay or trans person, but they were the ones that I always thought had the best lines. Like, how can you be the butt of every joke at the same time as being the funniest person in the room? Okay, so like, but now I want people, I have young people and parents coming to me on social media platforms asking me, can I help this trans guy? Can I help my trans child? Can I you know, how do I do this? What language do I use? And honestly, it would have made me so happy if either of my parents had ever been that humble to ask other people for questions, for advice, but they never. They were so arrogant that they knew what they were doing. They messed it up. You know, and it's so arrogant of straight heterosexual people to think that they can raise a queer child well without getting any help. That's just ignorant. You can't, because you can't understand their lived experience. Go to people who have the same lived experience, who were youth, trans or gay youth, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I think just to finish I would say, like, if I can be anything, I would be who I am now, as somebody that I never saw when I was a youth. That would have given me so much more hope young, to see somebody like me with friends, with business, with family, with relationships, with everything that I never thought I could have. I have now. And the only person that was really standing in my way was me.
It's funny that way, isn't it?
Conformity is a strong drug.
Yeah.
It's strong.
So I will say that's a good note to leave it on, but I got to give you a chance to let because you've got like you've got several accounts. I think I follow them all.
I do.
So I want to make sure you let everyone know all the ways they can.
Sure. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, no, I do have a lot going on, but the main ones to be looking at if you want to see what I'm up to is I do my daily vlog on the one with the tools on Instagram. Most mornings I'll come on there and have a moan about whatever's on my head when I get up. It's where I have most of my opinions and most of my community. But then I couple of years ago I created the Rainbow Carver account on Instagram, which really is just about my woodworking, my carving specifically. I also have an open journal we talked about earlier about where I put my non-binary journey, any experiences like getting my first binder. There'll be a blog in this next week about traveling in a binder. Those kind of things, because again, that was the image, that was the information I couldn't find as a queer youth. So that would have been useful to me. And lastly, if you want to support me financially or give me any support for, you know, raising tool money, I'm on Ko-fi.com, which is KOFI / the Rainbow Carver. That is an alternative to Patreon.
Okay.
So, but it's somewhere you can just drop a tip if you like what I'm doing, and you can also join the tier situation. Usually, as you know, Katie, there's Patreon is paid, and the only reason why I moved away from buymeacoffee.com was because they severed their link with PayPal, and unfortunately, that's where I get a lot of income from. So yeah, if you want to support me there. I do have a website also, rainbowcarver.com, where you can buy stuff from me, stickers, whatever bits and pieces I have for sale go up there. I think that's about it, really. I think obviously if you want to just have a laugh, I'm on TikTok. I don't really do much there. I have started to try and do a little bit more on TikTok now that I kind of just wanted to get 10K. So I did that, and now kind of like just like a bull that's charged the gate, and I'm just kind of stood in the field like I don't really know what else to do now, because that was what I wanted. So now I just kind of do whatever feels in my mind. Sometimes it's funny stuff, sometimes it's political. Like lately I've been talking a bit more about me, my sober journey and my non-binary journey. So yeah, any support over any of those platforms is always welcomed, and my DMs are open on all of those platforms. So if anyone does want to talk about anything that I've talked about here, you can always drop me a DM. Worst case scenario, I won't be able to talk to you because I haven't got time, and I'll tell you I haven't got time to talk to you about it, but I would direct you to resources. You know, it's like somebody approached me yesterday about a trans kiddie that's in his group, and I was like, go here, not my area, but here's the resources. I think that's all we can do, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for finally nailing me down to this podcast after chasing me for about 2 years to do it.
It's like, I'm gonna get you one of these days for sure.
Yeah, well, you should be very proud of yourself. You've done it now, Katie. Good for you, mate. But well done on the podcast. I love the podcast. And I have to say as well, the theme tune that Ashley made is actually my ringtone. Is actually my ringtone on my phone. I got her to send it to me. I was like, can you please send me the track, because I love it so much. I want it to go off in public so people are like, what's that? And I can send them to the podcast. Yeah, she so nailed it. Like, I just very talented. I like to listen to it myself, just
just to listen to the.
Yeah. So if you ring me, if anyone rings me and I don't answer straight away, it's because I'm listening to the music. That's why. So just ring me so I can hear it.
Yes. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay, so again, that was Lee of the Rainbow Carver, and I'll include the links on how you can follow along with them in the show notes for today's episode. Best places to find that is check the description on your podcast app for this episode. Next, if you're watching this on the Freeman Furnishings YouTube channel, you can check the description box down below. And lastly, head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast, and you can find this episode as well as past episodes. Make sure to follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. That's all one word, like all strung together, no spaces, no underscores, no dashes. Crafting a Revolution on Instagram. And there you can find a link in the bio to point you to all the different ways you can support the podcast in a monetary manner. But today I really want to ask for your help with getting more reviews up on iTunes. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you're enjoying the podcast, please head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. That is so extremely helpful for the podcast. Also, you can come on over to Instagram and meet your host. So you can meet me, Katie Freeman, at Freeman Furnishings, and my co-host, Katie Thompson, at Women of Woodworking and at Pen and Chisel. So come on over, say hi. We love chatting with people who listen to the podcast. And next week, we will be back with 2 brand new episodes. So in the meantime, and as always, let's go craft a revolution. She, her, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic masculinity.